In the second part of this documentary we explore the life of the Queen of Henry III, Eleanor of Provence. In this episode we explore her family life, and the events leading up to the Second Barons' War. At the age of around 16 to 17, 4 years into their marriage, Eleanor would give birth to her first child with Henry. She would have a son, born in 1239 at the Palace of Westminster. This son would go on to be Edward I, also known as Hammer of the Scots, and Edward Longshanks because of his great height. Despite some differences the couple would have at court, they would still have a loving relationship, and Eleanor would go on to another 4 children together. In the year following the birth of Edward, Eleanor would give birth to a daughter called Margaret on 29 September 1240. It would then be another 2 years before Eleanor and Henry III would have another child together. When Eleanor only around 19 years old, she would bear Henry with another daughter, Beatrice, on 25 June 1242, who would be named after Eleanor's mother. A further 3 years would pass for the royal couple before their 4th and last son was born on the 16th January 1245. Eleanor would give birth to Edmund, who would become known as Edmund Crouchback, 1st Earl of Lancaster, Leicester and Derby. All of Eleanor's and Henry's children would be brought up in a family environment at Windsor Castle, with Henry making enough time to be available with his children as possible. In 1251, Eleanor's eldest daughter, Margaret, married Alexander III of Scotland. At the time of the marriage, Margaret was 11 years old and Alexander was only 10 years old. At this time though, Alexander had already been the monarch for 2 years from the age 8, when his father Alexander II passed away in 1249. As part of Margaret's dowry in the marriage, Henry III would demand homage from Alexander for the Scottish kingdom, which Alexander refused to comply with. In 1253, in response to a report that Castile was about to attack Gascony, Henry III would leave England. He would lead an English army to support Gascony against any incursion from Castile. For the duration of his absence from the country, Eleanor would act as both regent and Lord Chancellor for England. During her period as regent, Eleanor would be pregnant with her and Henry's last child. They would have a daughter, Catherine, born on the 25th of November 1253. Catherine though would soon fall ill with a disease which at the time could not be diagnosed, but modern historians suspect it could be something akin to Rett syndrome. Eleanor's husband's campaign in Gascony would come to an end in 1254. Henry III would arrange with Alfonso X of Castile, a marriage between his son, Edward, who was 15 years old at the time, and Alfonso's half-sister, Eleanor of Castile. As part of this agreement, Alfonso would give up any claims on Gascony. In the same year, Eleanor's youngest daughter would marry John II of Brittany. Beatrice had many suitors for marriage prior to her wedding to John, including the kings of France and Norway. The tide of popularity would turn against Eleanor in 1263, when the citizens of London would turn against her. Eleanor, who had never liked Londoners, had demanded to be paid all outstanding debts due to her for her Queen Gold. Queen's Gold, which was a form of monetary tribute, where any fines handed to the citizens of the capital, 1/10 would have to be paid to the Queen. On 13 July 1263, the Londoners would attack her whilst she was travelling down the Thames by boat with whatever they could find, from food to stone paving and mud. If it was not for the intervention of Thomas Fitzthomas, the Mayor of London, she may have suffered serious injury of gold, even had been killed. This attack though would be the start of even greater trouble for Eleanor and her family. Simon de Montfort, who was a fierce critic of the king, had returned from exile to England, whilst Henry III was in Gascony. De Montfort would lead the barons in a revolt against the king in order to force Henry to rule with a council of barons. Part 3 of the documentary will explore the events of the Second Baron War and the effect on the life of Eleanor of Provence.